Jason and I finally arrived at the hotel. This place, surrounded by serene gardens and nestled among seaside cliffs, was a breath of fresh air after months of monotonous routine. We hadn't been on vacation together in a long time. Everything seemed perfect, the beautiful hotel, the cozy room, but I couldn't shake the strange feeling that something between us had changed. It was as if, over time, an invisible wall had grown between us, one that words alone couldn't break down. Jason was thrilled in his own way. I watched him, almost immediately after changing, disappear among the pools. He had always been at home in the water. I, on the other hand, felt a slight anxiety around the pool. Staying at the shallow end, I perched on the edge, dipping my feet cautiously, and watched him glide gracefully along the pool walls. That's when I first noticed him, Liam, the lifeguard standing nearby. His gaze, calm and assured, lingered on me for a moment. Perhaps it was just a professional habit, watching over each visitor by the pool. But there was something more in that look, something I couldn't quite define. Liam seemed to embody tranquility and strength. He moved with ease, exuding a quiet confidence that filled the space around him. I found myself catching his gaze again and again, my heartbeat quickening each time. Maybe it was because he embodied what I missed so much with Jason, a calm, deep-rooted confidence. His gaze stirred forgotten feelings within me, and I felt myself slowly drawn into this new world, one full of hidden emotions and uncharted desires. When Jason finally came back to the edge, he was brimming with excitement from swimming and the sunny day. I smiled at him, trying to hide the sudden loneliness that had started to take root inside me. We talked about our plans for the evening, about the restaurant we wanted to visit, but my thoughts had already drifted far away, to those discreet glances and Liam's quiet presence. The sun was beginning to warm up, its light gently reflecting off the water. Jason and I had been swimming together, but after a while, as usual, he went to the bar to get drinks. I was left alone by the edge of the pool, immersed in the quiet calm of the water, which gently lapped around me, almost enveloping me in an invisible cocoon. In these moments, I always felt a slight unease, as if the depth below wasn't measured in meters but something far more intimidating. Watching others glide confidently through the water, I suddenly felt a strange urge to experience the freedom they seemed to possess. Swimming had always filled me with anxiety, as if there was a lurking danger in the water I couldn't overcome. But in that moment, something within me urged me to push off the edge and allow myself to swim a little farther. My heart beat faster, a slight shiver appeared on my skin, and I barely resisted the urge to turn back immediately. The farther I swam, the more I felt anxiety rising. The water around me was getting deeper, and I began to lose control over my movements. For a second, I felt like I was drowning, paralyzed by fear. But at that moment, I saw Liam rushing to the water. Before I even realized, he was already there, quickly but calmly holding me by the waist, keeping me afloat. His touch was warm, and suddenly I felt the tension leave me, replaced by an unexpected sense of calm. We slowly made our way to the shallow end, his hand firmly holding me, and I didn't want him to let go. He gently helped me stand, his face so close that I noticed a slight smile in his eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked, not in a hurry to step back, as if allowing me to catch my breath. "Yes, thank you," I whispered, barely realizing my face was flushed. We stood in the shallow end, and I could still feel his hand, which seemed to have left an imprint on my skin, stirring something inside me. He took a step back, looking at me thoughtfully, and pulled a small card from his pocket. "If you'd like to take swimming lessons, you can call me," Liam said with a slight smile, handing over the card with his number. "I promise you'll forget all about your fear." I took the card, trying to hide the flutter within me. Just an ordinary number, but his words held something more, something I couldn't immediately grasp. I nodded, mumbling my thanks, and he left me alone, disappearing behind the bar by the pool. At that moment, Jason returned with the drinks, and I quickly tucked the card into my bag, hoping he didn't notice. Trying to look calm, I took a sip, feeling the cold drink slightly ease the strange heat ignited inside me. I tried to listen to Jason as he spoke about our plans for the evening, but my thoughts kept returning to the moment Liam held me in the water, to the touch of his hand and the gaze full of calm and understanding. It was just a number, but the feeling that something subtle had shifted inside me remained. And somewhere deep inside, a desire was growing to see Liam again, even if it meant facing my fears. Days after the incident at the pool were far from calm. Inside me, a struggle was unfolding, as if two voices were arguing, refusing to give me peace. On one hand, swimming lessons could genuinely help me overcome my fear and allow me to enjoy the vacation as I had hoped. On the other, I felt my attraction to Liam was more than a passing interest, and this thought stirred a sense of guilt within me. Every time I took Liam's card out of my bag, my heart fluttered. I wanted to call him, hear his voice, and feel the same confidence he gave me that day by the pool. But as soon as I thought of Jason, his trust, his calm approach to our marriage, my desire would give way to hesitation and doubt. Jason had never given me a reason to doubt his love, yet I felt that the spark between us had long faded. Although I missed it, I had convinced myself this was normal. Not every marriage keeps that passion alive after so many years. But something about Liam awakened long-suppressed desires and dreams I had hidden away, believing they were inappropriate. His gaze and touch that day felt entirely different from anything I had ever experienced with Jason. I found myself thinking about Liam, imagining how these lessons might go, how his voice might sound guiding me in the water. On the third day, I took out his card again, ready to put it back, when suddenly my fingers touched the phone. I hesitated for another moment, but then suddenly decided and dialed his number. The ringing in my ear made my heart pound, as if this call were something both forbidden and essential. "Hannah?" his voice sounded. He recognized me instantly, and there was a softness in his tone, as if he had been expecting my call. "Hi, Liam, it's me," I stammered, my voice trembling with excitement as I tried to steady my breathing. "I was wondering if I could take you up on your offer. The swimming lessons." There was a brief pause on the other end, and then he replied with a hint of a smile in his voice. "I'm glad you decided to give it a try. When would you like to start?" I set the meeting for the next day, and as I hung up, I felt my heart racing even faster. Inside, the anticipation of something new and unexplored was growing. When I arrived at the pool for my first lesson with Liam, a sense of awkwardness enveloped me completely. I couldn't shake the unease, and thoughts of backing out kept circling in my mind with excuses ready at hand. Liam seemed to pick up on my discomfort, and his warm smile instantly eased some of the tension. He started talking to me casually in a friendly way, and his relaxed manner began to calm me. It felt as if he created a protective circle around him, a space where I didn't need to fear my insecurities and doubts. When we stepped into the water, my heart was pounding, but Liam remained calm and focused, guiding my every movement. He gently supported me, touching my back, shoulders, and showing me how to hold myself in the water. Our bodies were close enough that I could feel his steady breathing, so calm and controlled in contrast to my own, which quickened with each of his touches. The water became more than just a place for training. It was almost a special space where touches and movements took on a deeper meaning. I could feel his strong hands, steady in every move, and couldn't suppress the fluttering sensation each time he held me, preventing me from losing balance. It felt as though my fears were dissolving in the water, only to be replaced by entirely new emotions I hadn't felt in so long. There was something unexpectedly tender in his touch, and each moment in the water felt significant, closer than just a lesson. When the lesson ended and I stepped out of the water, I tried to collect my thoughts, but it was almost impossible. The warmth of his hands and his calm presence still lingered within me, as though leaving a mark. On one hand, I was pleased with my progress. I was starting to feel more comfortable in the water. But on the other hand, the excitement and thrill from his touch ignited a fire in my soul, one I had long tried to suppress. This was something more than mere gratitude for a good instructor. On my way back to the room, I kept catching myself thinking about Liam far more often than I should. A conflict was flaring up inside me, a painful realization that, as a married woman, I was feeling an attraction to another man. Guilt welled up, but I couldn't fully suppress it. And with each step, I understood that this swimming lesson had left a much deeper impact on my life than I could have ever anticipated. When I arrived for the second lesson, there was a tension between Liam and me. like a thin, invisible thread connecting us both. His gaze, quick and almost imperceptible, constantly met mine, and there was a hidden spark in those looks. We didn't say anything aloud, but every time our eyes met, or he accidentally brushed my hand, the world around us seemed to fade away, leaving us alone in the confined space of the water. During this lesson, his touches became a little more frequent, as if by chance, but I couldn't help noticing how his manner of holding me changed. Gentle touches on my shoulders, on my arm, the support on my back. All of it made my heart stop and then race all at once. His touch burned, and though I tried to appear focused, I knew deep down that it affected me. Liam seemed to notice my unease and, continuing the lesson, suddenly asked an unexpected question. "Why didn't you learn to swim before?" His words caught me off guard, and I hesitated for a moment, holding my breath. Answering turned out to be harder than I thought. But with him, I felt safe enough to allow myself to be vulnerable. "I've always been afraid of deep water," I admitted, trying to explain that the fear of water had always followed me, just like my feelings of insecurity. It's hard to explain. Sometimes I feel the same way in my relationships. I'm not sure if I can keep afloat or if I'll just drown. Liam listened carefully, and in his eyes I saw no judgment, only understanding. It was as if he knew what it meant to live with a constant sense of anxiety. He let me speak without interrupting, and his calm presence gave me confidence that I could open up. "I think the key is to find something that gives you confidence," he said softly, not breaking eye contact. "In swimming and in life. And you'll be able to overcome it." His words felt deeper than just advice on swimming. He supported me not only physically but emotionally, as if in that moment, he was ready to be the one to whom I could entrust my deepest fears. We talked, no longer paying attention to the time, and this conversation became more intimate than I could allow myself to have with anyone else. When the lesson ended, I realized that Liam had become more than just an instructor to me. He had become someone I could trust, someone with whom I could share fears that even Jason didn't know. And as I returned to my room, I realized that my attraction to him was growing with every moment we spent together, and that this feeling was now impossible to deny. In the morning before my third lesson, Jason asked me over breakfast how my swimming lessons were going. Without thinking, I started enthusiastically describing my progress, telling him how Liam had helped me overcome my fears, how patient and supportive he had been. Jason listened intently, but I caught a new expression in his eyes, a faint hint of jealousy. "Maybe your instructor could teach me a thing or two," he said with a light tone, trying to keep it humorous. But I detected something more in his voice. I smiled, almost amused by his reaction, and replied playfully, "Oh, are you jealous? Or are you just worried I'll become a better swimmer than you?" Jason smirked, but I could tell something had struck a nerve. It even amused me a little, this rare moment where he showed such emotions. I felt a strange satisfaction in his reaction, but I tried not to dwell on it, and soon we each went on with our day. At the lesson with Liam, I felt much more confident. With each immersion, with each stroke, I could feel my fear fading, replaced by something else, a sense of freedom and lightness. Liam noticed my progress and praised me, telling me how much I had changed since our first lesson. "You're doing great," he said, his voice soft, almost approving. "See? It's all about confidence." His words made me smile, and I felt a special emotional closeness developing between us. The water had become an invisible bridge connecting us not only physically but emotionally. His support, his calm presence, it all filled me with an unusual confidence, and I suddenly realized that I no longer feared the water as I once had. I had let go of my fears, allowing myself to be fully immersed in the moment. When Liam approached me to adjust my movement, we were so close that I could feel his breath nearby. Our eyes met, and it was as if the world around us disappeared. He leaned in and softly touched my lips. I didn't pull away, though I knew I should have. It was a brief but passionate kiss that made my heart stop and race all at once. In that instant, I realized I had been subconsciously waiting for this moment, as if everything that had happened between us was leading to this point. The kiss ended as abruptly as it began. We looked at each other, and in his gaze I saw an understanding mixed with the same emotions that had swept over me. In that moment, it felt like the water around us had become a witness to something important, something that changed everything. Returning to my room, I was overwhelmed. A mix of excitement, guilt, and confusion swirled inside me. I understood that this moment with Liam had become something more than a fleeting lapse of judgment. This kiss had awakened something new within me, something that could no longer be ignored. After the kiss with Liam, I tried to hide my emotions and act normal with Jason. I kept telling myself it was just a moment of weakness, a mistake I could easily forget. But the feelings that moment had awakened in me were too powerful to suppress. Every time I was with Jason, I found my thoughts drifting back to Liam, to his touch, to that brief but passionate moment in the water. Jason seemed to notice that something was different. His gaze lingered on me a bit longer than usual, a faint hint of concern in his eyes. One evening at dinner, when I didn't respond to his question right away, lost in my thoughts, he gently touched my hand. "Hannah, are you okay? You've been a bit distant lately," he said softly, and I could sense the worry in his tone. I nodded, trying to keep my expression as calm as possible. "Yes, I'm fine. It's just maybe the swimming lessons are taking more out of me than I expected." Jason seemed to accept this explanation. He smiled and said something about swimming being physically exhausting. A pang of guilt stirred within me. He was chalking up my changes to stress and fatigue, not realizing that the true reason ran much deeper and was far more complicated. But I understood that my connection with Liam was becoming something more than just a harmless flirtation. This was more than a passing interest. With each new lesson, my desire and attraction to him grew. I knew I should stop, should end the lessons. But the very thought of not seeing Liam again brought a painful sense of regret. Deep down, I knew that my feelings for him went far beyond a kiss. I was drawn to Liam not only physically but emotionally, and this desire, forbidden as it was, only made it more enticing. With each lesson, my feelings for Jason seemed to drift farther away, overshadowed by what was happening with Liam. I tried to justify it to myself, convincing myself it was just a temporary infatuation, but deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Liam suggested we have the next lesson late at night, when the pool would be empty and there would be no prying eyes. The idea felt risky, but deep down I knew it only heightened my anticipation. We agreed to meet after all the hotel guests had left, allowing me to be completely free in the water without any hesitation or fear of being seen. By the time I reached the pool, night had already settled over the hotel, illuminated only by the soft glow of nearby lights. Liam was waiting by the water, his silhouette relaxed and confident. In the silence of this nighttime moment, it felt as though we had entered a different world, hidden from the everyday reality. As soon as I stepped into the water, Liam immediately noticed how confidently I held myself at the deep end. "You've really come a long way," he said, his voice filled with a pride that warmed me. "Look at you. You're swimming like a pro." I smiled, feeling his words fill me with confidence. The water no longer felt foreign to me. Instead, it felt like something familiar and comforting. I glided freely across its surface, and each time Liam guided me or helped adjust my movements, I found myself realizing that, in his presence, my fears disappeared. But at some point, the lesson stopped being just about learning. We found ourselves close once again, and the tension between us was stronger than ever before. The desire I had tried so hard to suppress surged through me with renewed intensity. Liam seemed to feel the same. Our eyes met, and words became unnecessary. I felt his hands on my waist, and without hesitation I allowed myself to reach out to him in return. His embrace grew bolder, as if we both had decided to cross an invisible line. Our touches spoke louder than any words, and in that moment, everything we had been holding back came to the surface. Liam leaned in, and our kiss was nothing like before. It was long, passionate, and every second of it echoed in my soul. We were no longer just student and instructor. In that moment, we became something more, something far beyond two people in a pool. When the lesson ended, I understood that we had crossed a line from which there was no turning back. That kiss, those touches, they had become a symbol that our connection had moved far beyond what was allowed. One day, Jason suggested we spend some time together at the hotel pool. I agreed, trying to keep a calm expression, though I knew it would be difficult to hide the changes in me. We both dove into the water, and I, feeling confident as ever, swam a few laps, enjoying the lightness that swimming now brought me. Jason watched me with surprise, noticing how much more comfortable I was in the water. "You're doing so well already," he said, raising an eyebrow. "So why keep up the lessons? Haven't you reached your goal?" I tried to keep my composure and quickly found an excuse. "I just want to perfect my technique," I replied with a smile, hiding the truth. "That way I won't ever need to take lessons again." Jason smirked and squinted playfully. "What, are you planning to go pro? Why do you need perfect technique?" "Maybe I am," I answered jokingly, trying to keep my tone light. We laughed, and for a brief moment I felt a familiar warmth in his gaze. But deep down, I knew there was something much deeper between Liam and me than just innocent swimming lessons. My meetings with Liam had become more frequent, and I found myself staying for private lessons with him that slowly drifted beyond the boundaries of formal instruction. Every encounter with him brought me a thrill I had never felt before. With him, I was in a world where only the two of us existed, where passion and emotion became the things I sought and found in his presence. Our kisses grew longer, our touches bolder, and each lesson became a moment when I could truly be myself. With each session, it became harder to return to Jason and maintain the appearance of a normal life. Liam filled the emptiness I had ignored for so long, and now I couldn't imagine my life without these secret encounters. They had become more important to me than anything that connected me to Jason. However, despite the euphoria, I couldn't shake the faint feeling of danger that lingered inside me. I knew that my relationship with Liam was crossing boundaries, and I understood that any slip-up could expose our secret. But instead of stopping, I only felt a stronger thrill from the secrecy, from the fact that our romance remained invisible to everyone around us. As we continued our hidden affair, I felt an underlying dread that our time together might come to an end too soon. I knew that once this vacation was over, Jason and I would return home, to another country, another life where Liam would have no place. The thought of leaving the hotel filled me with a hollow sense of loss, knowing that when we left, my romance with Liam would end. The fear of that inevitable goodbye clung to me, but so did the thrill of every moment we had left. These meetings with Liam had become my hidden world, a complete contrast to the life I led with Jason. And though the fear of exposure grew stronger with every encounter, I couldn't imagine stopping, even as the knowledge that our time was limited haunted me. After weeks of secret meetings with Liam, I began to notice how much I was changing. My habits, my behavior, everything felt a little different, and I couldn't hide it even from myself. I became bolder, more daring, freer within my own skin. It was like breaking free from invisible chains, and this transformation showed even in how I looked. I started choosing more attractive outfits, something a little brighter, something that highlighted my femininity. It was hard to admit that this newfound confidence was tied to Liam, but every glance in the mirror reminded me of his influence. I wore clothes that made me feel beautiful and desirable, as if they were a secret symbol of the passion I was keeping hidden. Jason, however, noticed the changes. He looked at me with curiosity, sometimes with slight concern, especially when I chose a bold outfit for dinner or spent a little too much time in front of the mirror. Finally, over dinner, he couldn't hold back and gently started a conversation. "Hannah, you seem different," he said, watching me with a hint of suspicion. "It's like you're becoming distant. Is everything okay?" I froze for a moment but quickly composed myself, trying to appear sincere. "Of course everything's fine, Jason," I replied with a smile that I hoped was convincing. "Maybe it's just these swimming lessons, they've given me a new sense of confidence. I guess I'm just happy with my progress." Jason nodded, but his eyes remained serious, as if he sensed there was something I wasn't telling him. I felt a slight pang of anxiety. I knew I was lying, and that lie was becoming heavier with each passing day. No matter how hard I tried to cope with the guilt, it wouldn't disappear. It was becoming increasingly difficult to look him in the eyes and pretend that everything was the same between us. Every moment with Jason now felt overshadowed by my desire for Liam. That desire had grown into something I couldn't let go of. As much as I tried to convince myself to stop, to let it go, temptation and passion won out. I understood that I couldn't go back to how things had been, couldn't simply forget and continue living as if nothing had happened. That evening, I headed to the pool for another lesson with Liam. Everything felt as usual, the soft glow of the pool lights, the coolness of the night air. These evening meetings had become my sanctuary, a place where I could escape everything and lose myself in a different world. I was certain that, as always, our meeting would remain hidden from prying eyes. But what I didn't know was that Jason had decided to surprise me. For the past few days, Jason had been sensing that something was wrong. My changes, the growing distance between us, and my unusual attachment to the swimming lessons hadn't gone unnoticed. And maybe tonight was his final attempt to figure out what was really happening. He'd decided to come and pick me up from my lesson, perhaps hoping to uncover whatever I was hiding. Meanwhile, I was completely absorbed in Liam's presence. We stood at the edge of the pool, talking about something trivial, though the words faded into the background. All that mattered was his closeness, his gaze, the warmth of his hand on my waist. I let myself get lost in the moment, completely disconnected from reality. I knew it was wrong, but this connection, this hidden passion, had become everything I kept coming back to. And then, out of nowhere, Jason's voice shattered the silence. "Hannah?" His voice was calm, but every note carried tension and pain. I turned sharply, and it felt as though time had stopped. My heart froze, and for a moment I thought I was seeing a shadow, a nightmare brought to life. But it was Jason standing in the shadows of the night, looking at us as if we were strangers. His eyes reflected pain and shock, mixed with profound disappointment. "What's going on here?" His voice shook, but he struggled to maintain his composure. I couldn't answer. My lips felt frozen, and any excuse seemed absurd. Liam slowly let go of me, but the silence that followed was unbearable, as if it were tearing us all apart. Jason didn't want to believe what he was seeing, but everything was already clear. Then he turned his gaze to Liam, and I felt everything collapsing. Their eyes met, and the tension in the air was almost tangible. Jason stepped closer, and a harsh exchange began between them, filled with pain and accusations. "I trusted you as her instructor," Jason said, his voice laced with anger and contempt. "I thought you were here to help her overcome her fears, not to destroy our family." Liam stayed silent, trying to withstand the weight of Jason's gaze, but no words could justify the betrayal Jason had witnessed. He tried to say something, but I knew everything had already fallen apart. I wanted to explain, wanted to intervene, but guilt and fear gripped my throat. "Hannah?" Jason turned to me, and in his eyes I saw despair and heartbreak. "You could have just told me you needed something more than I could give, but why? Why do this behind my back?" His words hit like blows, each one piercing my heart. Everything I had tried to hide had surfaced. He stood there, broken and empty, and I realized that I had shattered not only his trust, but also the bond we once shared, a bond that had once felt unbreakable. Jason took a step back, his gaze heavy and full of resignation. It was as if he were looking right through me, as though I were a stranger, someone he no longer knew. In that moment, I understood that our world, our life, everything I had known and valued, was broken beyond repair. After the truth came out, Jason immediately reported Liam to his superiors, explaining that the instructor had engaged in inappropriate relations with a client. I knew that this could very well end with Liam losing his job, and it hit me with painful clarity that I was the reason for his likely downfall. What once seemed thrilling and romantic had now turned into pain and chaos. I had become the cause of not only the destruction of my own family, but possibly Liam's career as well. This realization weighed heavily on me. I understood that I needed to gather my things quickly and leave. The situation had escalated beyond what I could handle, and I wasn't prepared for another confrontation with Jason. My entire life felt shattered, and staying here in the hotel where so much pain and betrayal had unfolded was unbearable. The only thing left for me to do was to leave, to try to process everything alone. Back in my room, I felt hollow and lost. Since that moment at the pool, I hadn't seen either Jason or Liam again. Jason had packed his things and left without a word, without giving me the slightest chance of forgiveness or reconciliation. His pain ran so deep that any apology from me would have felt empty. He hadn't given me a chance to explain, as if I no longer existed to him. And though I wanted to say something, to somehow make things right, I knew this was the end. I had destroyed our family, shattered his trust, and now he couldn't and didn't want me by his side. The weight of that realization pressed down on me like a heavy burden. I felt empty and lost. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone. Liam, who had once been a symbol of freedom and passion, now felt distant and ghostly. I understood that whatever we had could not continue. What had been between us had lost its meaning, and I realized this wasn't the path to happiness. Alone, left only with my thoughts, I began to reflect on everything that had happened. Each moment with Liam replayed in my mind, over and over again. I tried to understand what had led me down this path, what had driven me to destroy the life I had built with Jason. And only now, after losing everything, did the real reason for my actions become clear. I had been missing an emotional closeness, a connection that had faded in my marriage. Everything I experienced with Liam had been an attempt to fill the emptiness that had grown inside me. I wanted to feel understood again, to feel that I mattered, that someone saw me as I truly was. But as I thought about it, I realized I had turned to the wrong solution, seeking solace in someone else's arms instead of openly communicating with Jason, finding a way to bring that feeling back into our relationship. With each passing day, the sense of guilt grew stronger. I began to understand how deeply my betrayal had changed me, how much it had affected Jason. In his eyes, that last night at the pool, I had seen the extent of the pain I had caused him, how devastating my actions had been for him. It seemed that my betrayal had not only changed our relationship, but had left an indelible mark on his life. Deep inside, I realized that more than anything, I had let down the person who trusted me the most. This realization brought with it a painful awareness of all I had lost. I had destroyed something built on trust and love for the sake of an illusion that only deepened my pain. In trying to fill the void within me, I had only created a larger one. My actions hadn't given me what I sought. They had led only to chaos and suffering. After long and painful reflection, I realized that I needed to start over completely. This decision didn't come easily, but I knew that the only way to let go of the pain and guilt was to change my life entirely. I decided to move away, to leave this town filled with memories that pulled me back. I needed a place where I could begin again, find myself, and free myself from all the attachments that had become sources of suffering. The move became a symbol of release for me. Leaving Jason and Liam in the past, I allowed myself to let go of the weight of expectations and pain. Starting a new life, I gradually began to rebuild myself, rediscovering my own desires, dreams, and goals. I understood that my dependence on others' approval and my attempts to find happiness in other people had led me to ruin. Now, I was ready to become self-reliant, to work on myself, and to grow. I found a new direction in life, something that made me feel purposeful and confident. It didn't happen overnight, but each day I grew more aware that my happiness didn't depend on what others thought or expected of me. It was a long journey, but now I knew that I had to find fulfillment and peace within myself. Having found this new life, I finally felt free from the past. My happiness, my sense of wholeness, all of it became something I built for myself step by step.